The emergency beacon from the Kethmaran research vessel, Stellar Contemplation, screamed across 17 star systems with all the subtlety of a dying whale having an existential crisis. Within hours, half the Galactic Council's emergency response fleet had mobilized, their sleek warships cutting through hyperspace with the urgency typically reserved for imminent galactic extinction events. Captain Vex Thul of the Council cruiser Diplomatic Resolution stared at the decoded message with 4 of his 6 eyes while the other 2 tracked the tactical display. The translation matrix had clearly malfunctioned. The message couldn't possibly be accurate. "Communications Officer Zeflin," he barked, his mandibles clicking with agitation. "Run the translation protocol again. The emergency beacon is claiming that—" He paused, consulting his notes with the air of someone reading their own death warrant. "That the heir to the Kethmoran collective has been taken by predators, and that the pack mourns their lost young one." Zeflin's tentacles danced across her console with practiced efficiency. "Sir, I've run the protocol 6 times. The message is consistent. The Kethmaran research team was studying primitive life forms on the 3rd planet of the Sol system, when their heir, apparently a juvenile named Crixtal, went missing. The beacon indicates he was seized by the apex predators of the world, and is presumed consumed." The bridge fell silent except for the gentle hum of life support systems and the distant sound of someone's digestive tract processing synthetic nutrients. The Kethmaran collective wasn't just any species. They were the galaxy's foremost experts in xenobiology, with hide tough enough to deflect plasma bolts and pack hunting instincts that had evolved over millions of years. The idea that anything could successfully hunt one of them was roughly equivalent to a house cat successfully stalking a battle tank. "Sir," the tactical officer interjected, his voice carrying the kind of carefully controlled panic that suggested he'd rather be anywhere else in the galaxy. "The Sol system. Isn't that where the humans live?" Captain Vex Thul's blood temperature dropped several degrees. Humans. The bipedal mammals who had somehow convinced the Galactic Council to grant them provisional membership despite their complete lack of natural weaponry, telepathic abilities, or any other traits that might qualify a species as not utterly pathetic. They were the galactic equivalent of that friend who insists on bringing homemade cookies to a potluck full of professional caterers. "Patch me through to the human diplomatic channel," Vex Thul ordered, settling into his command chair with the resignation of someone about to deliver very bad news to very unprepared people. "We need to inform them that their world is now classified as a Class X predator zone." The view screen flickered to life, revealing the tired face of Ambassador Patricia Reeves, who appeared to be sitting in what looked like a converted broom closet. She was holding a steaming mug of some brown liquid and had the general appearance of someone who had been woken up at 3 in the morning to deal with other people's problems. "Captain Vex Thul," she said, taking a sip from her mug. "Let me guess. Someone's declaring war on us again? Or wait, did we accidentally violate another cultural taboo by existing in the general vicinity of someone else's feelings?" "Ambassador," Vex Thul began, his formal tone suggesting he was about to deliver news that would fundamentally alter the course of human civilization. "I'm afraid the situation is far more serious. We have received a distress beacon from a Kethmaran research vessel in your system. Their heir has been killed and consumed by the apex predators of your world." Ambassador Reeves paused mid-sip, her eyebrows rising in an expression that could charitably be described as mildly interested. "Apex predators, you say? What did it look like?" The transmission was unclear, but preliminary reports suggest a pack-hunting species with advanced tool use and complex social structures. The Kethmaran team was apparently overwhelmed despite their natural defenses. "Huh." The ambassador leaned back in her chair, which squeaked with the authority of furniture that had seen better decades. "And where exactly did this happen?" Coordinates indicate a settlement designated as Portland, Oregon. The silence that followed was the kind typically associated with the moment before someone delivers news that will either save the galaxy or doom it to an eternity of awkward diplomatic incidents. "Captain," Ambassador Reeves said slowly, "I think there might be some kind of misunderstanding here." Before Vex Thul could respond, his communications officer's voice cut through the bridge with the urgency of someone who had just discovered their house was on fire. "Sir, we're receiving another transmission from the Sol system. It's from the Kethmaran research team." The view screen split, showing both the ambassador's bemused face and a new feed that made every being on the bridge question their understanding of predator-prey relationships throughout the known galaxy. On screen was a human female, definitely one of the apex predators, based on the bipedal locomotion and opposable thumbs, walking calmly through what appeared to be a residential area. She was carrying something wrapped in a colorful textile, cradling it against her chest with the kind of careful attention typically reserved for handling unstable explosives. The wrapped bundle was making small chittering sounds. "Oh," said Ambassador Reeves, her voice carrying the tone of someone who had just solved a puzzle that everyone else was still trying to figure out how to start. "There's Crixtel. I was wondering when someone was going to come looking for him." The silence on the bridge of the diplomatic resolution was the kind that typically precedes either enlightenment or complete mental breakdown. Captain Vexthul stared at the screen where a human female continued walking down what appeared to be a tree-lined street, gently bouncing the bundle in her arms while making soft cooing sounds that the universal translator was rendering as soothing vocalizations of unclear intent. "Ambassador," Vexthul said carefully, his voice carrying the measured tone of someone trying to defuse a bomb while blindfolded. "Are you suggesting that the human in the transmission is carrying the Kethmaran heir?" "Well, yes," Ambassador Reeves replied, taking another sip of her beverage, as if discussing the weather rather than a potential interspecies incident that could reshape galactic politics. "Dr. Martinez found him yesterday evening. Poor little guy was lost in Laurelhurst Park, crying his eyes out. She's been taking care of him while we tried to figure out who he belonged to." The bridge crew exchanged glances that spoke volumes about their collective confusion. Zephlin's tentacles had stopped moving entirely, frozen above her console like she'd forgotten how to operate her own limbs. "Taking care of him?" Vexthul repeated, his mandibles clicking in what his species considered a sign of extreme mental distress. The distress beacon indicated that the heir had been seized by apex predators. "Oh, that." The ambassador waved her hand dismissively. "Yeah, Dr. Martinez is definitely an apex predator. She's a pediatric surgeon at Oregon Health Sciences University. Top of her field, actually. Terrifying competence when it comes to dealing with small, vulnerable creatures." On the tactical display, the human continued her leisurely stroll while the bundle in her arms made increasingly content chittering sounds. The universal translator was now picking up what appeared to be the human singing, a low, rhythmic vocalization that seemed to have a remarkably calming effect on the Kethmoran heir. "Sir," the communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Kethmaran research vessel. They're requesting permission to land at the coordinates where their heir was last seen." "Granted," Vexthul said automatically, then paused as the implications hit him like a cargo freighter at full impulse. "Wait, they want to land on the human world, where the apex predators are?" "Captain," Ambassador Reeves said, her voice taking on the patient tone typically used when explaining obvious concepts to small children, "I think you might be operating under some misconceptions about human behavior. Would you like me to patch you through to Dr. Martinez directly?" Before Vexthul could respond, the view screen flickered again, this time showing the interior of what appeared to be a human dwelling. The human female, Dr. Martinez, presumably, was sitting in a chair that looked suspiciously comfortable, with the Kethmoran heir now unwrapped and visible. The sight that greeted the bridge crew challenged everything they thought they knew about interspecies relations. Crixtel, heir to one of the galaxy's most formidable warrior species, was approximately the size of a human house cat. His natural armor plating, which should have been a dull brown color indicating juvenile status, was gleaming with health. He was currently engaged in what appeared to be play behavior, batting at a small object dangling from a string while making happy chirping sounds. "Hello," Dr. Martinez said, looking directly into the camera with the calm competence of someone who had spent years dealing with situations that would reduce lesser beings to gibbering wrecks. "You must be the people looking for this little guy. He's been an absolute angel, haven't you, sweetie?" She reached down and gently scratched behind what Vexthul now realized were auditory receptors, causing Crixtal to lean into the touch and purr with contentment. "Dr. Martinez," Vexthul began, his voice strangled with confusion. "The Kethmoran research team reported that their heir had been taken by predators. They believed he had been Consumed. The human's expression shifted to something that could only be described as professionally offended. Consumed? I gave him organic baby food and goat milk. Do you have any idea how hard it is to find lactose-free formula that won't upset a non-human digestive system? I spent half the night researching xenobiology papers just to make sure I wasn't accidentally poisoning him. On screen, Krikstal had abandoned his toy and was now attempting to climb up Dr. Martinez's arm, his small claws finding purchase on her clothing, rather than showing any sign of distress at being scaled by a creature whose species was known for their hunting prowess. The human simply adjusted her position to make the climb easier. The research team, Vexthul continued weakly, they said he had been seized by pack hunters with advanced tool use. Well, yes, Dr. Martinez replied matter-of-factly. I did have to use a net to catch him. He'd climbed up a tree and couldn't get down. Then I called my colleague Dr. Williams to help me figure out what species he was, and we spent most of the night researching proper care techniques. I suppose that counts as pack hunting behavior, if you really want to stretch the definition. The communications officer's voice cut through the bridge's stunned silence. Sir, the Kethmaran research vessel is requesting immediate transport to the surface. They're declaring a Code 7 emergency. Vexthul's remaining blood temperature plummeted. Code 7 was reserved for situations involving the potential extinction of an heir to a major galactic power. It automatically triggered military response protocols and could result in the complete quarantine of an entire star system. Dr. Martinez, he said urgently, you need to understand the gravity of this situation. The being you're caring for is not just any Kethmoran. He's the designated heir to their entire collective. His loss could destabilize their entire governmental structure. The human looked down at Krikstal, who had successfully completed his climb and was now perched on her shoulder, preening his small crest feathers with obvious satisfaction. Really? She said, her tone suggesting she was filing this information away for future reference rather than being particularly impressed by it. Well, he's definitely got the confidence for it. Spent the whole morning trying to establish dominance over my coffee mug. As if summoned by her words, Krikstal turned toward the camera and let out a small but unmistakably imperious chirp, fixing the view screen with what could only be described as a regal glare. The effect on the bridge crew was immediate and profound. Every being present felt the sudden, inexplicable urge to offer tribute. Oh, dear, Ambassador Reeves said, her voice carrying the tone of someone who had just realized that the situation was about to become significantly more complicated. I think we might need to have a conversation about human pack bonding behaviors. The Kethmaran research vessel Stellar Contemplation descended through Earth's atmosphere with all the grace of a falling brick, wrapped in diplomatic immunity. Captain Vexthul watched from orbit as the ship's emergency landing protocols engaged, sending automated apology messages to every air traffic control system within a 1,000-kilometer radius for the inconvenience of their unscheduled arrival. Sir, Zephlin reported, her tentacles moving with the nervous energy of someone handling live explosives. The Kethmaran landing party is requesting immediate escort to the location of their heir. They're also demanding that we establish a security perimeter around the entire settlement to prevent further predation events. Vexthul rubbed his temples with two of his hands while using the other four to manage the increasingly complex diplomatic crisis unfolding on his screens. The human settlement of Portland, Oregon, was now the center of galactic attention, and from what he could see through the monitoring satellites, its residents were handling this development with the kind of casual indifference that suggested they either didn't understand the magnitude of the situation or had collectively decided that alien visitation was just another Tuesday. Ambassador Reeves, he said, opening a channel to the human diplomatic mission, we need to discuss immediate security protocols. The Kethmaran pack response is extensive. The ambassador appeared on screen, still holding her mug of brown liquid, but now she was standing in what appeared to be a different location, somewhere outdoors with trees visible in the background. Behind her, Vexthul could see other humans moving around with purposeful efficiency, carrying various objects and engaged in what looked suspiciously like organizational activities. Oh, the security situation is well in hand, she replied cheerfully. Dr. Martinez called her colleagues, and they've set up a proper care rotation. Little Crixtal is getting round-the-clock attention from some of the best pediatric specialists on the West Coast. Care rotation? Vexthul repeated, his voice climbing several octaves. Ambassador, the Kethmaran Collective operates on pack loyalty principles. When their heir goes missing, the entire social structure mobilizes for recovery. They're not just sending a retrieval team, they're sending a full pack response unit. How many beings are we talking about? 47 adult Kethmaran warriors, 12 pack leaders, and 3 collective elders. Ambassador Reeves paused in her sipping. Well, that's going to be interesting. Dr. Martinez's house only has 2 guest bedrooms. Before Vexthul could explain that the Kethmaran pack response wasn't a social visit, his tactical officer's voice cut through the bridge with the kind of urgency typically reserved for announcing incoming asteroid impacts. Sir, multiple human vehicles are converging on the target location. I'm reading 17 cars, 3 trucks, and something the database identifies as a minivan approaching from various directions. On the main screen, the satellite feed showed an increasingly complex scene unfolding around Dr. Martinez's residence. Humans were arriving in small groups, carrying bags and containers, organizing themselves with the kind of efficient coordination that suggested this was not their first experience with emergency childcare situations. Ambassador, Vexthul said slowly. What exactly is happening down there? Oh, you know how it is, she replied with the casual tone of someone discussing weekend plans rather than a potential interspecies diplomatic incident. Word got out that there was a lost alien baby who needed looking after. Dr. Martinez put out a call on the hospital network and, well, humans tend to respond pretty strongly to that sort of thing. The tactical display updated in real time, showing the arrival of the Kethmaran landing party. 47 warriors in full ceremonial armor emerged from their transport, their formation precise and intimidating. Each warrior stood nearly 3 meters tall, their natural armor plating gleaming with the kind of maintenance that suggested they took their protective duties very seriously indeed. Pack leader Thexkor, identifiable by the complex crest arrangements that indicated his senior status, stepped forward and activated his universal translator. His voice, when it came through the communication system, carried the kind of authority that could stop charging battle rhinos in their tracks. Humans of this territory, he announced, his words echoing across the residential street with impressive volume. We have come for our heir. Surrender him immediately, and your pack will be spared the consequences of harboring stolen young. The response from the humans was not what anyone on the bridge had expected. A woman emerged from Dr. Martinez's house, carrying Crixtal wrapped in what appeared to be a soft blanket. She walked directly toward the formation of armored warriors with the kind of fearless confidence typically associated with either supreme courage or complete obliviousness to danger. "Are you Crixtal's family?" she called out, her voice carrying the warm tone of someone greeting expected guests. "We've been taking such good care of him. He's been fed, bathed, and he had a lovely nap about an hour ago." The effect on the Kethmaran warriors was immediate and visible. Their aggressive formation wavered as they caught sight of their heir, who was clearly healthy, content, and making happy chirping sounds at the approaching humans. Pack leader Thexkor's translator crackled with what might have been confusion. You have been caring for our heir?" "Of course," the woman replied, as if the question was absurd. "He's just a baby. What else would we do?" Behind her, more humans emerged from the house and surrounding vehicles. They formed their own loose formation, but instead of weapons or armor, they carried blankets, food containers, toys, and what appeared to be various childcare supplies. "Sir," the communications officer reported, his voice tight with disbelief, "I'm detecting elevated stress hormones from the Kethmaran landing party, but they're not combat-related. The readings are protective? Parental?" On screen, something unprecedented in galactic diplomatic history was unfolding. The Kethmaran warriors, bred for combat and trained in pack hunting techniques, were slowly and carefully approaching the human formation. Their body language had shifted from aggressive to cautious, their movements taking on the careful precision of beings approaching something precious and potentially fragile. Crixtal, apparently recognizing his own species, let out a series of excited chirps and reached toward the warriors with his small arms, The human woman, Dr. Martinez, Vexthul realized, smiled and began walking forward to facilitate the reunion. "There's your family, sweetie," she said in the same gentle tone she'd been using throughout the crisis. "They were so worried about you." Pack leader Thexkor reached out with hands that could crush steel, accepting his heir with movements so gentle they barely disturbed the blanket. Crixtal immediately began purring and nuzzling against the familiar armor plating, clearly happy to be reunited with his pack. But instead of the expected immediate departure, Thexkor turned back to Dr. Martinez with an expression that the universal translator was having difficulty parsing. "Human," he said, his voice carrying undertones that suggested he was grappling with concepts that didn't quite fit into his species' normal social framework. "Our heir shows signs of having been excellently cared for. His health readings are optimal, his stress indicators are minimal, and he appears to have formed attachment behaviors toward your pack." Dr. Martinez beamed with the satisfaction of a job well done. "He's such a good baby. Very polite, great appetite, and he loved the mobile I set up over his crib." "Crib? Oh yes, we set up a proper nursery. Dr. Williams brought over some of her old baby furniture, and the whole pediatric unit contributed supplies. We wanted to make sure he was comfortable." The silence that followed was punctuated only by Crixtal's contented purring, and the distant sound of more human vehicles arriving with additional supplies that were apparently no longer needed. "Ambassador," Vexthul said weakly, "I think we need to discuss human pack bonding behaviors in much greater detail." "Oh," Ambassador Reeves replied, her voice carrying the tone of someone who had just realized that the real conversation was about to begin. "I don't think you're quite ready for that discussion yet." 3 hours later, the residential street in Portland, Oregon, had been transformed into what could only be described as the galaxy's first interspecies childcare conference. The Kethmaran warriors, still in full ceremonial armor, were seated in a circle on Dr. Martinez's lawn, sharing what appeared to be snacks with a growing number of humans who had continued to arrive, despite the crisis being technically resolved. Captain Vexthul materialized via transport beam, flanked by a full diplomatic escort and carrying enough emergency protocols to handle anything from first contact situations to accidental declarations of war. What he found challenged every assumption he'd ever made about predator-prey relationships, pack dynamics, and the fundamental nature of interspecies interaction. Crixtal was being passed carefully between Kethmaran warriors and human caregivers, each transition accompanied by detailed discussions about feeding schedules, sleep patterns, and what appeared to be comparative notes on child-rearing techniques across species lines. "Pack leader Thexkor," Vexthul began, approaching the group with the careful steps of someone navigating a diplomatic minefield. "I trust the retrieval of your heir has been satisfactory?" The massive warrior looked up from where he was examining what appeared to be a small toy that made soft musical sounds when manipulated. "Captain Vexthul," he replied, his voice carrying undertones that the universal translator was rendering as profound confusion mixed with reluctant admiration. "The situation is more complex than our initial assessment indicated." "How so?" Thexkor gestured toward the humans with one clawed hand while supporting Crixtal with the other. "These beings, they have demonstrated pack behaviors that exceed our own protective protocols. When our heir was in distress, they responded with immediate care provision, resource allocation, and collaborative problem-solving. Their pack cohesion appears to extend beyond genetic relationships to include any vulnerable individual within their territory." Dr. Martinez approached the group, carrying a steaming mug and wearing the expression of someone who had spent the morning solving problems that everyone else was still trying to understand. "Captain," she said, nodding politely, "I understand there's been some confusion about the situation. Would you like me to explain what happened?" "Please," Vexthul replied, settling into what appeared to be a lawn chair that someone had provided for his comfort. The absurdity of conducting galactic diplomacy in someone's backyard was not lost on him, but at this point, he was prepared to accept that normal protocols had been permanently suspended. "Yesterday evening, around 7 p.m., I was walking through Laurelhurst Park when I heard crying," Dr. Martinez began, her tone taking on the clinical precision of someone delivering a medical report. "I investigated and found Crixtal stuck about 15 feet up in a Douglas fir tree. He was clearly distressed, possibly dehydrated, and definitely lost. The research team reported that he had been seized by predators, Vexthul interjected. Well, yes, she replied matter-of-factly. I did have to use a net to get him down safely, and then I called Dr. Williams to help me identify his species and determine appropriate care protocols. We spent most of the night researching Kethmaran biology and consulting with xenobiology experts at the university. Pack leader. Thexcor's mandibles clicked in what his species considered a sign of deep thought. The human pack demonstrated immediate protective responses toward an unknown species' offspring. This behavior pattern is unprecedented in our experience. Not really, Dr. Martinez replied, taking a sip from her mug. It's pretty standard human behavior when we encounter a lost child. The species doesn't really matter. If something small and vulnerable needs help, we help it. The implications of this statement rippled through the assembled beings like a shockwave. Vexthul felt his understanding of human social dynamics undergo a fundamental reorganization that was both enlightening and deeply unsettling. Dr. Martinez, he said slowly, are you suggesting that humans will provide parental care to any juvenile they encounter, regardless of species? Within reason, yes. She shrugged, as if this was the most obvious thing in the galaxy. I mean, we do it for abandoned animals all the time. Why wouldn't we do it for an intelligent species? Sir, Zeflin's voice crackled through his communicator. I'm receiving priority transmissions from 17 different species councils. They're all requesting clarification on human adoption protocols and asking whether their offspring would be safe in human territory. The situation was spiraling beyond anything covered in Vexthul's diplomatic training. He looked around the lawn, where Kethmaran warriors were now engaged in what appeared to be detailed discussions with human pediatric specialists about optimal nutrition for developing exoskeletons, while Krixtal dozed contentedly in a specially modified carrier that someone had apparently constructed overnight. Pack leader Thexcor, he said. What are your intentions regarding this situation? The massive warrior considered the question while gently adjusting Krixtal's position in the carrier. The human pack has demonstrated superior childcare capabilities and resource mobilization in crisis situations. Our heir has clearly benefited from their intervention. We are reconsidering our previous assessments of this species. Reconsidering how? We formally request permission to establish a cultural exchange program with the human medical community. Our young could benefit from exposure to their caregiving techniques, and we believe our protective protocols could enhance their childcare security measures. Dr. Martinez brightened visibly. Oh, that would be wonderful. We've been wanting to expand our pediatric program to include more diverse physiology training. Having access to actual xenobiology case studies would be incredibly valuable for our residents. Vexthul felt the last of his preconceptions about human capabilities crumble into dust. Dr. Martinez, are you suggesting that humans would be willing to provide medical care for alien children on a regular basis? Of course, she replied, as if the question was absurd. A child is a child, regardless of how many limbs they have or what color they bleed. Our job is to help them grow up healthy and happy. The communicator crackled again. Sir, I'm now receiving formal requests from 23 species councils asking about establishing emergency child care protocols with human settlements. The Zephyrian Collective is offering to trade 3 star systems for guaranteed access to human pediatric services. 3 star systems? Vexthul repeated weakly. The Zephyrians have notoriously difficult offspring, Ambassador Reeves explained, appearing beside him with the silent efficiency of someone who had been monitoring the entire situation. Their children go through a phase where they can phase through solid matter, but can't control it. Human daycare centers are apparently the only facilities in the galaxy with the combination of patience, creativity, and safety protocols necessary to handle that particular challenge. As if summoned by the conversation, Krixtal woke up and began making small, demanding chirps. Dr. Martinez immediately reached into a bag and produced what appeared to be a bottle filled with a pale liquid. "Feeding time," she announced, settling into a chair and beginning the process with the practiced efficiency of someone who had done this countless times before. Krixtal accepted the bottle eagerly, his small hands wrapping around it while he gazed up at the human with obvious trust and affection. The sight of the heir to one of the galaxy's most formidable warrior species being bottle-fed by a human pediatric surgeon, while surrounded by an impromptu interspecies childcare conference was, Vexthul realized, probably going to feature prominently in diplomatic history texts for centuries to come. "Captain," Pack Leader Thexkor said, his voice carrying the formal tone of someone making an official declaration. "We formally propose that the human settlement of Portland, Oregon, be designated as a galactic safe haven for juvenile beings of all species. Their demonstrated capabilities in crisis childcare and resource mobilization exceed anything in our previous experience." "Sir?" Zeflin's voice cut through the communicator with barely controlled excitement. "The Galactic Council is requesting an immediate emergency session to discuss the implications of human childcare capabilities for interspecies relations. They're also asking if we can get the recipe for whatever Doctor Martinez has been feeding Crixtal, because apparently his health readings are better than they've ever been." Vexthul looked around the lawn, where the most unlikely diplomatic summit in galactic history was continuing to unfold. Humans and Kethmoran warriors were now comparing notes on everything from optimal sleeping temperatures to the best techniques for encouraging proper social development in young beings. "Ambassador Reeves," he said, "I think we need to have a very long conversation about exactly what humans consider normal behavior." "Oh, Captain," she replied, her voice carrying the tone of someone who was enjoying watching the galaxy's assumptions get systematically dismantled. "I don't think you're ready for that conversation yet. We haven't even gotten to the part where humans start treating lost alien adults like they need taking care of too." As if on cue, one of the human caregivers approached Pack Leader Thexkor with a steaming mug and what appeared to be a sandwich, speaking in the same gentle, nurturing tone they'd been using with Crixtal. The galaxy, Vexthul realized, was about to become a very different place. And somehow, he suspected, a much safer one for anyone small, lost, or in need of care.